Good morning, everybody. This concerns London, and it's very bad news for the future of London if this is true, because there's a new poll out this week that shows that Sadiq Khan is likely to be re-elected as London mayor for a third time, if this poll is correct. It shows that he has 50% of the vote share, according to the poll, 50% support. The nearest rival in the contest at the moment is someone called Susan Hall. I know her. I used to sit next to her on the London Assembly. She's the Conservative candidate. She's only on 25%, according to this new poll. So way, way behind. But the interesting thing about this latest poll is that it shows that from the one before, one previously, Khan is up 10%, Hall is down 10%. And most of the polls that were done about London mayor election voting intentions before October showed a really, really close race between them, so that they were hardly separated at all. Both of them on something between 30 and 35%. One of them even showed, I think, Khan on 34, Hall on 32%. So very, very close. And there was, talk and consideration that she may beat Khan actually when the mayor election takes place, if nothing changes between now and then. Of course, a week is a long time in politics. Not all of the candidates who are going to stand have declared themselves yet, so there may be some other candidates coming into the race later on that might shake things up. But certainly, if you just go by what the polls are saying and the people who've declared already, the four Westminster establishment parties have already said that they got candidates in, so Labour, fake Conservative, Lib Dem and Green. And it seems like, according to the polls, Labour and fake Conservative are the top two candidates in terms of responses to the polls that have come out already. Now, why has this happened all of a sudden? I suspect it's because of something that has got absolutely nothing to do with London. And up to the beginning of October, the main issue in London was the ULEZ expansion. And a lot of people, particularly in outer London, who are now subject to the ULEZ charges to drive in London every day, are getting hammered, and they're going to come out to vote against Khan and would vote maybe for whoever they think has got the best chance of beating him. They might not particularly be fans of the fake Conservative Party, but they'll vote for them because they're better than Khan. This is what happens in the first past the post political system, unfortunately. But since the beginning of October, and what has caused this huge swing in the polls, which is a very, very big swing and a very sudden swing, I suspect, is the situation in the Middle East. And of course, what's happening here, to me, this is a conflict that's been going on for 75 years. It's flared up again, and it's 3,000 miles away. It shouldn't affect how people vote in the UK, but I think it is. And the reason why it is affecting the polling for the London mayor elections is that the two candidates who up to now have been the top two in the polls, Khan, Labour, and Hall, fake Conservative, have taken different positions on what they are saying about the conflict. Khan is calling for a ceasefire, and Hall is saying that Israel has the right to defend itself. Now, of course, what I've said about this, I strangely find myself, and I say this very reservedly, because I sat in the London Assembly for 5 years questioning Khan. He was terrible. His political positions were appalling. The decisions he made politically, with the finances, with the budget, I had issue with almost everything he said. and questioned him relentlessly over 5 years, and on many times pulled him apart in Mayor's question time. But on this one issue, I find myself, saying the same thing as someone who previously I disagreed with on absolutely everything. I've actually myself called for a ceasefire because the terrorist attacks of the 7th of October were appalling and horrific. But the carpet bombing of Gaza, which has now killed 5,000 or more children and 10,000 people or more in total, is just as horrific for the people who live there in Gaza. And I don't want this to escalate and escalate and escalate and get out of control. We have to find some way to end the slaughter and the suffering on both sides of the divide in that part of the world. Even though, it's nothing to do with me particularly. I'm not Jewish, I'm not Arab, I'm not Muslim. So, it's two tribes fighting each other a long way away. But whatever we can do to stop people killing each other, we should try to do. Whereas Hall is taking the position, which I hear a lot in commentary and on the mainstream media, Israel has the right to defend itself. Yes, it does, but it shouldn't be killing thousands of innocent children at the same time. So it's a very, very difficult thing to speak about, and to bring in all the nuances that need to be brought into the debate or the discussion, if you like. And it's horrible to call this a debate. It's not really, because real people are dying in real time every day. But back to London, why this has had such an effect on the polls in London is the demographics of London have totally changed, completely changed over the last 30 years, 20 years, and they continue to change. And more and more Muslims are coming to live in London from abroad. Waves of migrants from different countries. I mean, obviously in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of Pakistanis came to London originally, and they have now second and third generation Pakistanis and Bangladeshis live in London. But you also have waves of people coming from Iraq and Syria and Libya and Somalia and Sudan and Afghanistan and Iran, all countries where Western governments have stoked up wars and caused migration crises. And then over the last 20 years, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions more. I don't know the exact number because nobody does, because no one's been keeping a real track on how many people have been migrating into the UK. And about a third of people that migrate into the UK end up living in London, and then they stay here for a bit of time, 5 years, get citizenship, and then they can vote. Or if they're from a Commonwealth country, like Pakistan or Bangladesh or India as well, the moment they get here, they have the right to remain, the settled status. They can vote immediately. They don't even need to wait 5 years and get citizenship, because if they're from a Commonwealth country, people have the right to vote in elections straight away, including national elections. I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should only let people vote in this country who come from countries that we have a reciprocal agreement with, like Ireland, for example. So, Irish citizens living in the UK can vote here. British citizens living in Ireland can vote in Ireland in their elections as well. That's a reciprocal agreement. But Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, British citizens living there don't have the right to vote there. So we shouldn't give people from those countries the right to vote here. If they're not citizens. I mean, that's not a reciprocal agreement. That's giving an advantage to one side over the other. I mean, the only other countries that I know that we do have reciprocal agreements, voting agreements with, are Belize and Barbados, interestingly. Ireland, Belize, Barbados. No problem with those people voting in UK elections, because UK citizens who live there can vote in their elections. But I don't know of any other countries that we have such an arrangement with. But of course, more people coming in to live in the UK, particularly in London, means that the demographics of the UK are changing, and London even more so. London is now hyper diverse. White British are in a minority. It's only 35%, I think, of the population of London is white British. There are, just a majority of white people just about in London still, because of Eastern Europeans and Germans and Americans and French and so on living in London too. But in the next census, it's more. It's going to be on the way to, a minority of white people in total, which is very interesting, because in 1950, the population of London was over 99% white British, and now that's down to 35%. So there has been huge demographic change in the last 75 years since immigration started, and then was accelerated since the Blair regime came into power in 1997. I mean, that's just a simple fact of statistics and demographics. But of course, that affects voting patterns. And when something happens that people who are living in London, living in the UK, have an intense emotional connection to, that is happening abroad, then what the candidates in an election say about something that happens abroad is going to affect how people vote in elections in this country. It shouldn't do, because people should be voting in the London elections about the policies that affect London, transport policies, police and crime policies, and so on. What is the mayor going to do with the budget that he has for London? Cycle lanes and so on. Should we have them or not? I don't think we should have new cycle lanes in trunk routes, because it narrows the roads and causes congestion. Some people disagree, but that's my position. But those are the things that people should be considering when they vote in a London election, not what is happening 3,000 miles away in Israel-Palestine. But that is the reality that we're now living in, and that is probably the reason why the polls for the London mayor election have changed so much and so quickly, and to such an extent over the last month, since the current wave of the Middle East conflict flared up again on October the 7th. So we shall see what happens. But of course, the elections are still a few months away, and things can change again, and they can change again, and they can change again before election day. So we shall see what happens. But it's a very interesting movement in opinion that's happened, and it's not for a good reason.